Over 100 years ago, a great inspiration to many who have since stood on this very stage, married a Scottish woman, moved to Glasgow, and was appointed secretary of the Royal Geographical Society of Scotland, near the banks of the River Clyde. It was in these great shipbuilding docks that he started dreaming of becoming the first to set foot on the farthest reaches of the globe. After ups and downs, he was knighted for his achievements in the era of the famed polar explorers. And then he settled down, but only to dream again of the final great polar challenge, crossing the last untraversed continent on Earth over the South Pole. He raised the money and gathered 26 others, and in 1914, the ship Endurance set sail towards the very end of the Earth. But as those familiar with this epic journey well know, nearing Antarctica, the ship Endurance was crushed by ice floes and gales never seen before. Their hopes of success dashed. They found themselves in even greater peril than they could ever have planned, alone with only what they could salvage before the ship sank before their eyes. Facing certain death with just months of supplies, the captain did not lose hope. As expected, standard procedure was followed. The crew was deemed lost at sea, no rescue parties came, and why would they? The chances of finding them alive were next to zero. All it would mean was more time and risk and cost. So the ship Endurance and its crew were destined to die on the ice, hopeless and alone. But 12 months on, despite 6 months in absolute darkness and incredible cold, all the crew were still alive, kept so by the power of hope and leadership and teamwork, and a wholesome, balanced diet of penguins. Real ones, not the chocolate ones. Those were invented by William MacDonald 27 years later. He was a biscuit manufacturer in Glasgow, but he didn't know that. Anyway, 16 months after their ship sank, the captain saw that the end was truly nigh. Only one chance remained to save his crew, one chance for his people to be returned to their homes. But this would mean attempting something that no one had ever attempted before, risky to the extreme and on paper quite absurd. But what was the alternative? What was this incredibly small glimmer of hope? A true moonshot, a tiny island in the middle of the raging southern oceans, beset on all sides by 60-foot waves, with a tiny little whaling station on it, on the other side of 4,000-meter mountains, 800 miles from where they stood, across an uncrossable sea. All they had was a tiny wooden boat, enough to squeeze on 6 of them, carefully selected for their abilities in navigation and for their spirit of collaboration. Pascal's wager, the tiniest chance of an infinite prize, is worth the risk. In this case, the prize of 26 lives. No question, but no foolish move either. And so began what many believe is still the greatest open boat voyage of all time, powered above all by hope. But not just hope. Hope and 3 other things. Adaptation, navigation, and data. Fast forward a century, and we find ourselves on the same planet, but a very different world. Satellites are circling the Earth. GPS is in everyone's hand. Thousands of boats and flights are crossing the great oceans every day. UK to Antarctica can be booked on lastminute.com, and the most common crises in the Antarctic are the midlife crises of tourists running marathons on the ice. In the very heart of exponential technology innovation, a Silicon Valley pioneer has just sold his incredible biotech company. He's exercising at home, and he falls unconscious. Overexertion? No. The news has broken to him that he is diagnosed with one of the most lethal of all cancers, a brain tumor called glioblastoma multiforme, or GBM. And so he finds himself thrown into his incurable sea. Most are dead within 12 months. Science has done little to progress survival, despite billions being spent in 40 years. But surrounded by connected information, biotechnology, and computer science that would have seemed like alien inventions on the ship Endurance, Silicon Valley pioneer finds himself facing the inevitable, but willing to take the risk to save his life. He puts together his team of 6. They deeply analyze the problem to understand all the options before them. They sequence the tumor for its DNA, its RNA, its metabolism, its immunology, their compass, their sextant, and their map, and new biomarkers, liquid biopsies, and advanced ways of imaging to see if the cancer is growing or shrinking or evolving from deep within inside the brain in near real time. Assisted by artificial intelligence, they plan what route to take and which treatment in which order. They monitor continually. They record meticulously, enduring and adapting, but always driven by data and sharing it. Nearly 2 years on, despite the roughest of seas, they are still on target to reach their tiny island. In the same year, in the UK, several thousand people have received the same devastating diagnosis of GBM, receiving standard care and facing their fate. On her way to dinner to support budding social entrepreneurs, a remarkable woman, a formal social worker turned MP, turned peer in the House of Lords, a campaigner for social justice her whole life, the person who brought to the UK the 2012 Olympic Games, fell unconscious without warning getting into a taxi on her 70th birthday. Overexertion? No. She too received the diagnosis of GBM. Friends of hers heard about what was going on in Silicon Valley, and special centers far and wide exploring new routes to treatment offered their services to her. And so too began her journey to cross the incurable sea. Despite unprecedented access to every conceivable option, her priority was more to accelerate access to these breakthroughs for others. There was a turning point in her journey, one I haven't seen in my career as a doctor before, and one I shall never forget. The only time she cried during her treatment was when she was in a waiting room, and she saw that all the other patients around her only had less hope and less options because of access and privilege. She immediately moved to hold a debate in the House of Lords to bring about flash freezing of tumours for deeper diagnosis, collaborative data sharing, and next-generation adaptive combination therapy trials to become routine practice. So what are these adaptive trials? Well, let's go back to Sir Ernest Shackleton and his little boat. Before setting off, they deeply analysed the problem and all the options. They plotted a path and chose a crew. They equipped themselves with all that they needed. And most importantly, they had the tools to navigate continuously their position to endure or adapt at the earliest opportunity. So why don't we use such real-time navigation and adaptation in medicine, even though we're doing it every day, crossing oceans and boats and planes? Well, if we took our current medical model and applied it to aviation, this is how it would look. We're here in London, and someone believes they've got a great new discovery for a new route where more people would actually make it over the ocean to New York. So we design an experiment and send 1,000 planes in exactly this direction. 100 make it to Boston, 300 make it to New York, 100 make it to Washington, D.C., and the other half fall out of the sky just as they did before. This would be a blockbuster drug. 40 years later, we'd be following the same route religiously unless we gathered new evidence. That's aviation using the medical science model. No, of course they don't do that. They examine the weather forecast well before they take off. They plan each route for each individual flight. They measure their exact position in real time, and they adapt, recording everything, reporting what's happening to the plane behind theirs, and the plane behind that, and the plane behind that. And if they get a great result, they learn from it. If a plane falls out of the sky, they learn from it too, learning not over decades, but in a matter of days. And they also learn by analysing millions of flights about what's most likely to work safely and efficiently for any given plane, on any given route, on any given day. This has become routine in aviation and many other industries, including security, finance, and commerce, but not yet in medicine. Because it was impossible and unaffordable in medicine until just a few years ago. But it is becoming possible today, and not just for the lucky few in Silicon Valley. Scientists here will be writhing. The scientist in me is writhing too, because how do you know which drug is working and which is not? This isn't good medical science. Correct. It's terrible medical science, but it's brilliant data science. And facing complex, fast-evolving systems biology problems where there is no single target to hit, there is no single solution. Patients can't wait for A versus B trials destined to fail in isolation. It's time to combine medical science with data science. Complex cancer is a complex web of diseases. It's like finding 200 fast-moving needles in a haystack all at the same time. Our medical science is so powerful, but we must now add to it a new kind of data science. A new kind of data science which we can all harness today. Tessa Jowell and her amazing daughter Jess Mills founded Act for Cancer in January 2018. Its first mission, the UK government-led brain cancer moonshot, the Dame Tessa Jowell Brain Cancer Mission as it's now known. ACT, A-C-T, Adaptive Combination Therapies. Act for Cancer aims to make universal access to adaptive trials a new standard available to all. Everyone on adaptive trials will have their tumour properly frozen, better sequenced, deeply understood, interpreted by a new generation of molecular oncologists with data scientists. Routes through pre-approved combinations of targeted therapies, immunotherapies, metabolic therapies, maybe even diets, will be laid out, computed by AI, navigated by doctors, collaborating with other experts and their patients and their carers. Therapies need not be so toxic. They may be new ones, or old ones, or ones used in other cancers, or for other things. But crucially, we will accurately and efficiently monitor our position in real time. Remember, we're on a little wooden boat. Are we on track? Drifting around or going backwards? Afloat or sinking? Just like every ship crossing the oceans today. Moreover, we will record and learn from every move, the real-world experience of what patients and their loved ones are seeing every day in their expert eyes. Starting with brain cancer, ACT's mission is to build the first adaptive trial platform for a whole nation, not just for GBM, but for all other currently untreatable cancers. Perhaps then for other health systems, and not just the UK too. That, no question, is a way to change the world. For me, after being 20 years practicing as a doctor and 30 years as a technology geek, it is a turning point in how we research medicine as scientists, how we practice medicine as doctors, and how we believe in medicine as patients. Shackleton made it to South Georgia Island. It was not a fluke. Our Silicon Valley pioneer is still en route, along with several others following his path. Tessa made it a good long way with an exceptional quality of life and with as much love and care around her as anyone could have wished for. But sadly, in March this year, just 11 months after being diagnosed, she was hit by one of those 60-foot waves and passed away. She famously said in her final speech, "In the end, what gives a life meaning is not only how it is lived, but how it draws to a close." She died with meaning and with sharing and with learning and with hope. If not for her, then for the others to follow her. Her last words to me were, "We've done everything we can, haven't we?" And I reassured her, of course, but she gripped my hand and looked me squarely in the eye and said, "No, we've done everything we can for everyone else, haven't we?" I think it's best we hear in her own words what she wanted for all others with incurable cancer, like her.
Seamus Heaney's last words were, Noteli timeri. Do not be afraid. I am not afraid. I am fearful that this new and important approach may be put into the too difficult box. But I also have such great hope. So many cancer patients collaborate and support each other every day. They create that community of love and determination that they find each other every day. All we now ask is that doctors and health systems learn to do the same, and for us to work together, to learn from each other. In the end, what gives a life meaning is not only how it is lived, but how it draws to a close. I hope that this debate will give hope to other cancer patients like me, so that we can live well together with cancer, not just dying of it. All of us, for longer. Thank you.
Find the Ernest Shackleton inside of you. Find the Silicon Valley pioneer inside of you. Find the Tessa Jowell inside of you. So that for all those that find themselves drowning in the incurable sea, we can strive towards cures. And if not cures, then learning. And if not learning, then purpose and meaning. And if not that, then above all else, hope. This way we can work together as patients and doctors and health systems, science and industry, to find new routes to treatment, not just for the millionaires, but for the millions. This way, we can all live better with incurable cancer and not just be dying of it. Thank you.